Good morning. It is Saturday, December 3rd. I can't believe it's December. And it's officially been a full month since I've recorded an episode. Not because there isn't a lot to talk about, there is. I've been, just to give you an idea of the last month, in addition to holiday stuff and travel and just living my life, I've been doing a lot of research. I want to bring more of a series so that it's more in kind of bite-sized, digestible form. Talking more about our kind of big medical system. So I've definitely hammered home some points about big pharma, as well as the episode I did on big insurance. Those will still be part of this series because the three are so enmeshed. It's impossible to talk about big medical system without talking about big pharma and big insurance as well. But I've simultaneously been trying to figure out, along with that, how to not get banned from YouTube. Because I want to stay on YouTube for as long as humanly possible, not at the expense of bringing forth truth and facts and educational content, the same kind of content that's helped me as I've kind of been on this awakening journey and learning journey, and just constantly been trying to keep my mind open to facts no matter where they point. But I want to stay on YouTube because that's where a lot of people exist, and that's a tool that I've used to research a lot of different things. YouTube has still not told me what two strikes, specifically in those videos, were deemed as violations of the medical misinformation policy. But from what I've gathered via context clues from other channels, because listen, I've literally recapped the same information and the same facts that I've heard on other videos that have in many cases been allowed to stay on YouTube. So the gist that I've gotten is it doesn't matter if what you're saying is true. If it is in contrast to mainstream media, the mainstream narrative, then there are extra boxes that you need to check, such as saying, along with whatever information I'm bringing forth, if I'm talking about the COVID vaccine and if I'm talking about data that might suggest you should question that, its efficacy and its safety, then I had better also tell you the vaccines are fantastic and they're safe and effective. So disclaimers like that, as well as only including information directly cited from official sources, so like government websites and CDC data, etc., rather than recapping what podcaster or a journalist is saying about data from official sources, if that makes sense. So rather than just citing that person where I heard the official data, citing the official data and sources itself, which doesn't, on its face sound like a bad thing. It sounds, like, oh, that could be, a fair way to go about determining what is and isn't allowed to exist on YouTube. One might argue it'd be nice if the same rules applied to everybody, regardless of their ideological objective. So that's where I have been. But I want to talk today about, before I start diving into the big medical series and content that I would really love, it's really been on my heart. I really want to start sharing that because there's a lot there. Right now, I want to focus on just the idea of trust. So one of the journalists I love and follow, Matt Taibbi, he's an independent journalist. He's a writer. He's authored several books. One of those figures who was kind of viewed at least as a left-leaning, kind of more liberal journalistic voice, wrote for the New York Times, and other than, deemed reputable and trustworthy sources. So that's his background, and he is one of those voices who has been, over the past few years, really since the 2020 election cycle, kind of demonized for some of the things that he's bringing forth and bringing to light, when really it's the same kind of journalistic integrity he's been bringing all along. But take that for what you will. He has a great podcast called This Week in America. He has a great Substack that I follow. He is on Twitter. And last night he dropped what he called the Twitter files would have since kind of been hashtagged and trending on Twitter as Twittergate. So I'll let you look into those tweets. And it's essentially, if I could recap in layman's terms, it's essentially a data dump. He had thousands and thousands of, one can put the dots together and say that this was an Elon Musk driven sharing of thousands of Twitter documents and files and emails and things like that, showing, I'm not even going to get into where this borders into potential First Amendment violations in terms of government pressure and Justice Department pressure and forces being at play when it comes to Twitter's decisions around censorship. But it shows at best the haphazard nature of Twitter, and then one can, project that out into the broader kind of social media, big tech context of how they're deciding what can be shared. And I saw one kind of subtweet kind of response to this dump is like, oh, you're acting as if, because he focused a lot on internal emails and conversation lawmakers, and the Biden team specifically is implicated in this dump of their suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story, and how it was originally just covered under this blanket, it violates the hacking policy. And they were open in these documents about, what we can infer from all these conversations is how they were essentially saying, what happened with the 2016 election. When I originally heard that, the 2016 election, I was thinking, oh, misinformation around, they were so concerned about what happened, like the false stories about Trump, that they were trying to correct it now. No, they're talking about the WikiLeaks Hillary emails. So they're basically saying we want to avoid that from happening again. And if we remember back, those were real emails. They were verified emails. They were leaked though. And there's been a lot of, especially at the time, conversation around should that have been allowed to happen? Are journalists allowed to publish leaked, stolen content? And the answer is that legally, yes, they are. There's a Supreme Court ruling on the subject. So yes, they are. But these Twitter / government / Department of Justice conversations / Biden team conversations are basically around, we need to prevent that from happening again. So be on the lookout. We at the very least have the Biden team implicated in terms of saying be on the lookout for, hacker type content that could influence the election in 2020. So, and then, he posts, I think everybody, I'm going to say this because anytime I assume that everybody knows this at this point, I'm like, I have to remember, like, not everybody knows all of this necessarily. And definitely a lot of people, I don't think, have put all of the pieces together in the same way that some of us have tried to piece this together. But if you look at campaign donations, not by Twitter as an entity, but by their employees, in the 2020 election cycle, over 98% of private donations by Twitter employees were to the Democrat Party. About 1.37% were to the Republican Party. In 2022, the midterm election cycle, that was an even more overtly Democrat-leading number. Over 99% of donations from Twitter employees, private donations, went to the Democrat Party. So Matt Taibbi, which in his just beautifully trustworthy, transparent way, kind of reminding people, level setting the playing field, if you will, he reminds people, like, this isn't an issue of, Republicans and Democrats, like, in a partisan way. There being like an issue simply with it's not just a left-wing Democratic issue, if you will. Like, Republicans have the same kind of access to the same channels to work with Twitter to report what they think might be disinformation. However, because of the nature of the political inclinations of the vast majority of employees within Twitter, including high-level employees, low-level employees, entry-level, whatever, there are simply more opportunities for Democrats to kind of push their own agendas and flag information that they deemed to be politically, not in their favor. So I thought that was a good point to bring up and good to remember, is it's not as if, only the Democrats can do this. It just happens that there are more opportunities and more channels for them to do so because they have more relationships, because most of Twitter employees were and are Democratic supporters. So, so this dump happened. It leads to a lot of questions around really getting at your First Amendment values. And I think that our challenge is to think outside the context of the Hunter Biden laptop story, because these documents reveal that really early on, within hours of kind of saying the New York Post story about it violated the hacking policy, Twitter employees are on record saying, we knew after a few hours that was not going to hold, but we were kind of all in on it already, so we kind of had to commit. No, but basically they were we had to continue to err on the side of erring, essentially. So the story, and then you have, conversations that ensue from there. I'll let you go to Matt Taibbi's Twitter and view the thread yourself. It's nicely numbered, so you can follow along in chronological order. You all know how Twitter works probably better than I do. So you can read it there for yourself. I think that it brings up the bigger issue of, and this is something that I take for granted now with my kind of perspective shift, and where I think I can, trust versus not trust, but really the kind of bigger inclination I have right now, which is to take a step back and use my own critical thinking. Because the media in particular, certainly the government as well, but the media in particular will literally tell you not to do your own research, because that's their job, is to do their own research. In theory, as an ideal, one might agree with that. That might be true. Just to give you a timeline here and a kind of apples to apples comparison, back in 1983, 50 media companies controlled 90% of American media. So kind of spread out a little bit. That's quite different today. You might have heard of the Big Six, or this big concept that came out several years ago called the illusion of choice. And the illusion of choice applies to many aspects of American life. Media is certainly one of them. You think, if I don't trust one channel or one pundit, I can just turn the channel and turn on a different outlet, right? Well, 6 media companies today dominate over 70% of cable television. So there you have that. Media is, the whole idea of choice is an illusion. And I'm just going to play this quick clip, this compilation, and I apologize that I can't share my screen and let you actually see it, but what you're going to hear, I'll tell you what I'm seeing on the screen as you listen to this, is it's kind of a mashup of subsidiaries of, are they called subsidiaries? What do they call them? Affiliates, that's right, of Fox, ABC, NBC, ABC, all of the major media networks. And it's kind of a mashup of their story about the very issue of, this is just one example. There are thousands of these, by the way. So when you start hearing media outlets across different networks, we think Fox is going to report something different than MSNBC, right? Wrong. This illustrates just one of thousands of examples of the way that they not only coordinate their stories, but speak oftentimes in verbatim unison about these stories. This one happens, ironically, to be about disinformation itself. So take a listen.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities, the El Paso, Las Cruces communities, Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish fake stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Okay, hopefully you were able to hear that, okay, or at least get the gist. So even about the topic that was just presented there, about disinformation itself and who you should trust, mainstream media, all of them want you to know that you can trust nobody but them. And like I said, there are thousands. You can look at any news story, especially if it's related to something medical in nature, because as a reminder, over 70% of cable news revenue comes from the pharmaceutical companies. That's not news specific, that's cable news overall. So imagine what a more striking percentage that looks like for news outlet airtime. So they want you to know that disinformation is out there, it's scary, and you should only trust them. Because it's their job to just bring you unbiased, unfiltered reporting of the facts that they happen to coordinate. Because, listen, media is centralized. It is centralized. There are no options. It is not a decentralized environment of choice. So do I watch local news? Sometimes, yes. I'm not advocating against the people who work for media outlets. Many of them, I've met some of them. I did an interview with one of our local cable news affiliates recently on a story about daycare and childcare in Middle Tennessee. But the point is, you've got to bring your critical thinking into it. You've got to bring your own discernment and judgment into it, and don't let people tell you that you as an adult are not capable of doing research. That just makes you some idiot going rogue, some conspiracy theorist going rogue. It makes you smart is what it makes you. And it makes you more informed, certainly. Because mainstream media is centralized. It is no accident that they speak in unison on so many issues all the time. How does this happen? That's probably best saved for another episode. It's not them story by story calling up their competition, who we're taught is their competition, and going, oh, what are you going to say about that? Oh, yeah, we should, this means so much. This is so important to the American people that we should probably, make sure that we're, consistent in the message on this one. No, they're consistent in their message on everything. Literally everything. So go to your local news for the weather. Go to your local news for different local news stories, but take everything with a grain of salt. It's not rocket science, really. Just disabuse yourself of the idea that you are getting good journalism. That's it. Go to independent journalists, go to podcasters, go to, just people who are learning about these things and doing their research as best they can and bringing forth what they found as well as their opinions. It doesn't mean all of those sources are going to be right or that you're going to agree with them or that you're, going to agree with 0% or 50% or 100% of what they say. It just means that you're going to learn different perspectives and learn more because you're not going to learn it from mainstream media. You're just not. I'm sorry. You're going to learn the one thing that they want you to know and the one centralized message that they want to convey to the American people. So just make it your objective, not to even change your mind on things. Just make it your objective to not be a sheep anymore. That's certainly my objective. I'm sure that I'm wrong on multiple things all the time, but I'm at least trying to get myself outside of the system of coercion and propaganda and forced thinking and into the realm of true freedom of choice for myself and for my family. And so that's all I have for you today. Take care and have a happy December.